Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Hirsch. I have been teaching kettlebells as well as practicing with kettlebells for over 18 years. And I've also been a health and fitness coach for over 20 years. And I have poured myself into the practice of kettlebell training, not just, of course, with my own personal practice, but also with countless clients throughout the years. What I have done is created a beginner's kettlebell training program. And I did this really in response to the fact that it is the #1 question that I get asked in my Facebook community, the Kettlebell Gym. And right now we have about 135,000 people in that group. It grows roughly 500 to 1,000 people every single day. And I comb through 50 to 100 posts every single day. And I can tell you that overwhelmingly, this is the #1 question. It gets asked in a lot of different ways. How do I program? How do I begin my kettlebell training? What's the program that I should follow as a beginner? These things are very, very opaque, I think, for people when they first get into kettlebell training. And it's also very overwhelming. And I think the reason that it's so overwhelming is because there's so much novelty when you start to train with kettlebells. And the reason for that is because, first of all, we have a whole new world of exercises open to us, right? So you're learning exercises. Maybe you've never even done deadlifts before, so you could be starting off there. You've got the Turkish get-up, which is really complicated. And then you see swings and cleans and snatches and people doing all kinds of things. And it's like, where do I start with kettlebells? And of all of the things I see people doing, what would be right for me to even practice at this point? And so you have the novelty of all of the new exercises that you have to learn. But then what you'll also notice right away is that the programming itself is also very different. And what I mean by different is I'm kind of comparing it to what a lot of people are going to be coming from, which is more of a bodybuilding style of training. So whether you've created your own programs in this way or you have had a coach or a trainer that has created programs for you, many people who come to kettlebell training are used to doing more of a bodybuilding style of weightlifting. When you're bodybuilding, the programming, not just the exercise selection, but the programming is usually quite different than when you kettlebell train because of the fact that you are muscle isolating, and also because the primary goal with bodybuilding is hypertrophy. With kettlebell training, we're not muscle isolating, and the primary goal is not hypertrophy. For that reason, you don't see a lot of 3 sets of 10 or 5 sets of 8 to 12, that type of thing that you might see in bodybuilding. You see a lot of different sort of manipulation of the acute variables of volume, rest, and sets, and also the acute variables of intensity, right? All those things can kind of be tweaked a little bit depending upon what the practitioner is doing. And so you're trying to learn new exercises. You're also trying to figure out, how do I put together these programs? One thing that you will notice as a side note in this particular program is that we actually do, I do stick to very standard programming as far as the acute variables of reps and sets are concerned for most of the exercises we're doing, which are in the hypertrophy zone for most of the exercises. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is not actually because the primary goal is hypertrophy. The reason that I do that is because that rep count of about, I would say 10 to 15 reps seems to be ideal for learning technique. So a lot of times what happens is you'll be practicing a new exercise that's on your program and your technique isn't perfect, but you're going with a very lightweight, it's very safe, but every rep that you perform, you have to be really careful not to make a little shift or get out of alignment. You might need someone to spot you. Maybe you're looking in the mirror. Maybe you're just closing your eyes or just paying really close attention to the feedback from your body. But the point is that a lot of these things at first, you're going to have to really practice and perfect the movement, okay? And I generally find that the rep count of 10 to 15 reps is ideal for that. Much more than that, we tend to get into the point where we could get fatigued, even with a light weight, and then the form suffers. But if we don't get into that many reps, that 10 to 15 rep count, then we don't get enough reps to really practice. What I generally like to see is over a set with a new practitioner learning a newish exercise over a set of 10 to 12 reps, that the final rep looks better than the first, and the final set looks better as a total than the first set does. Does that make sense? So I find that volume of 10 to 15 reps ideal for practice at that point. So that's primarily why I use that rep count. However, with kettlebell training, you'll often find that, and I'll do this very frequently, where I'm doing 1 rep of a particular exercise and then resting, or just 2 to 3 reps and then resting. It really depends upon the way that you enjoy working out. It depends upon your ability levels, and it depends upon what it is that you want to get out of your training. Are you shooting more for strength, more for power, more for endurance, that type of thing? So these are the questions that I really aim to answer within this program for you, so that some of this overwhelm that you're going to have with all of this novelty coming up, I take it away, and you can just kind of follow the program. One thing that I will say is that this program is meant to be 4 to 6 weeks in duration, and then you progress. And something else to really think about here is that when we talk about progressing with kettlebell training, unlike with bodybuilding, if you're used to bodybuilding, you progress your training by more volume and more intensity. With kettlebell training, you do progress your training with more volume and more intensity. Volume meaning reps and sets, intensity meaning how heavy you're lifting. So you do progress your training that way with kettlebells also, but moreover and more largely, you're progressing your training by learning more challenging techniques and progressing your skill set, okay? So that's something you don't really do with bodybuilding, because the moves are very, very simple, and even there may be a little bit of technical aspect to some of the lift, for the most part, they're pretty simple. So it's not a matter of skill, it's a matter of, again, progressing through volume and intensity. As you progress through the levels that I'm providing for you, the technical difficulty of the exercise will become greater and greater and greater. Now, of course, if you get to a point where you don't need to get more technical because of the sport you're training for, let's say it was road biking, right? If I'm a road cyclist, I don't really get a lot of benefit from bent presses or Turkish get-ups or highly complex exercises, kettlebell complexes, where you're switching from one exercise to another, to another, to another very quickly to build a lot of coordination. That wouldn't be necessary if I was a road cyclist. I'd want a much more simple program based upon power and endurance, right? So you have to think about what you're training for, but our lives can be very sort of chaotic. And if we're doing pickleball or tennis or playing with our kids who are, wanting to really get some energy out, and you want to be there and participate in that, if you're jumping dirt bikes off of sand dunes, if you're rolling on jiu-jitsu mats, whatever it is, these things are very demanding on your nervous system. They require a lot of neuromuscular coordination. They require a lot from your nervous system while it's also fatigued. So when you think about increasing the technical difficulty of your training with kettlebells, keep in mind that if you're doing any of these things, then there's a lot of carryover into those sports that you're going to practice here in the gym, and it's going to, you expect that to help you not just to be a better performer, but also to stay more resilient and less likely to get injured doing the things that you love to do. Now, before I move on, let me just say one more thing, which is I want you to think about this program as a stepping stone on your journey that's going to take roughly 4 to 6 weeks. However, if you are a little bit more deconditioned, if you have some postural deviations that you're working out, or if you are just very, very tight, you don't have a lot of range of motion, and any of these things are inhibiting you from being able to complete the program with excellent technique, then take as long as you need. Okay, some other things that might get in the way is your schedule. Maybe you're not able to train as much as you wanted to because, you know, something came up, you went out of town, you got hurt, you got sick. Anything can happen. So keep in mind, it's a 4 to 6 week program in general. If before you progress to the next level, hold yourself to a really high standard, okay? Try to make sure that you are able to get through every workout without any excessive soreness the next day. And you're also able to do that with the higher range of the set windows that I provide for each workout. So the set window really fast is how many sets you're going to perform in this workout, and I'll give you a window of how many sets. And you may want to do less, you may want to do more, depending upon a few things that we'll talk about later. So at least before you progress to the next level, make sure that you can do the full workout with a maxed out set window with normal range of motion. Not really too concerned about how heavy you're lifting proportionate to your body weight or anything like that. Just want to make sure that before you progress, you are technically really, really sound. And if that takes you 8 or 12 or 16 or 24 weeks, it doesn't matter. Work at your own pace, be patient with your body. So now we're going to get into decoding the PDF. On that point, go down to the description below. You can download that PDF. You can go through it with me as I discuss it. And I'm going to share with you what all of the acute variables mean on that PDF so that when you go to look at it, it makes sense to you. If you would prefer, you can just click on the link in the PDF for that workout and it'll take you to the YouTube video and you can just follow along with me performing that workout. But if you also want to just take this PDF to your gym and do it there and you don't want to have to follow along with me, then stay tuned for a little bit longer as I share with you and decode what all of the variables and what this program means and everything I filled out in all of the little boxes. Okay, we're going to start with exercise selection. Please do not change the order of the exercises I've provided for you. Okay, they're always in a very intentional order. And so if there's an exercise that doesn't work, you can feel free to make that exercise easier. This is really going to relate to body weight exercises like a push-up, for example. You can elevate your body and do a push-up on a very stable, elevated surface. And so you're pressing less of your body weight this way. There's all types of variations you can do for body weighted exercises. And of course, for kettlebell exercises, you can just go lighter, lighter, and lighter until you're actually doing the same movement without a kettlebell at all. So you can change the intensity of those exercises. You can omit the exercise if you absolutely have to. If it's an exercise that for some reason causes you a lot of pain or it goes beyond the limitation no matter what variation, you can remove it. Just please don't change the order of the exercises. Now let's talk about the acute variables relating to volume. This is reps and sets. We'll start off with reps. One thing that you'll notice under the rep column is consistent. I have a slash negative, then a number. That number is usually a 2 when we're doing hypertrophy sets. Strength sets, it's a -1. And in endurance sets, it's a -3, okay? So slash -1, 2, or 3. What that means is that you always stop the set 1, 2, or 3 reps shy of failure. Okay, we do not want to rep and program into our nervous system reps that are breaking down our form due to failure. So stop 2 reps shy of failure anytime you see that. If it's a strength set, you might be stopping 1 rep shy, but that's what that slash negative number means. The sets, there's 2 things to remark about here. One thing is the set window. I'm always going to give you a set window of 3 to 5 sets, for example. This means, hey, if you're pressed on time, do 3 sets, get through your workout. It's a shorter workout today. Maybe you want to increase the frequency of your workouts when the duration is slightly diminished. That's fine. Maybe you do 3 sets. Another reason you might be doing 3 sets is because you have never done this program before. You're a little bit deconditioned and you don't want to be extremely sore the next day. So I would say to anybody that's a little bit deconditioned, or anybody that this is a brand new program, a brand new way of moving and lifting, Start off with 3 sets. Be on the low end of that set window for the first week or 2. Once you've seen how your body responds, then you can decide, do I want to go up to the 4th set, and then even up to 5 sets. So maybe your first 2 weeks you're at 3, second 2 weeks you're at 4, and the final 2 weeks you're at 5 sets, and then you progress the program itself. That might be one example of how you do it. It really depends upon your abilities, your limitation, what weights you have available to you, and how much time you have available to you. When I say how much weight you have available to you, if you have a lot of very light kettlebells, you may have to make up for that with a little bit more volume, meaning that you're going to go into the higher end of that set window a little bit more. Okay? I still would not recommend doing more than 3 sets in your first workout of a program, no matter what. Just see how your body responds. If you left a lot of energy left on the table and you still had a lot more to go and you quit prematurely, not a big deal. You could just come back the next day and work out a little bit harder. You learned what your limitations are the safe way, and not the way where you can't even walk around properly the next day. Because a lot of times when you're training with kettlebells, you don't think you're going to get that sore, but you get really sore. Next thing I want to talk about when it comes to sets is the abbreviation SS. That means superset. I also use the abbreviation SS, by the way, for circuits. The superset is 2 exercises. You perform 1, you have 0 rest, you move directly into the other, then you rest. Then you start back over at the end of that rest period. That's a superset. A circuit is the exact same thing, but it's 3, 4, 5 or more exercises. Just for simplicity's sake, sometimes when I'm creating a circuit, I will just use SS 3 or 4 times in a row, just so you know. In this program, that's not going to be relevant because we don't do any supersets more than 2 exercises. How will you know how to do the superset? First thing is, the superset always ends with a blank line underneath it. It also will say SS in the set box, and the final exercise in that set will have the set window. It will also have the rest period, whereas the first exercise in that superset will have a 0 for rest. And you'll also look into the notes and see that it says that's the end of the superset. So you'll always know when that superset is ended for those 3 reasons: blank line, set window in the set column, and in the notes it says superset has ended. In this case, you're going to go back and forth into those 2 exercises with the rest and also the number of sets within that set window, okay? We'll talk now about the acute variable of tempo. Tempo is really important, but there's also some leeway, okay? So first of all, what is tempo? Tempo is the speed at which you perform an exercise, broken down into 3 numbers. The first number is the first phase of the movement. So if I was doing a squat pattern, the first phase would be an eccentric downward movement in the hips, okay? Followed by an isometric hold or no, followed then by the concentric standing up out of the squat, okay? So those are the 3 positions. It's the eccentric, the pause, and the concentric at the top. There is no 4th number because we're implying, or I'm implying here, you go directly into the next rep, or you put the weight down and finish the set at the end. So when it comes to the tempo, first of all, a deadlift starts with a concentric movement, whereas a squat begins with an eccentric movement. The first number always denotes the first phase, regardless of whether it's eccentric or concentric, okay? Keep that in mind. It's always the first phase of movement. The middle number always relates to the isometric hold, and the 3rd number always relates to that second phase of movement, okay? When I write the 1st and 3rd number, I'm putting in my mind a guideline to give you as to what a normal rep might look like. If you have short limbs and you're really good and you've dialed in a motor pattern so perfectly, you might be a little bit faster than the tempo I've laid out, because I'm not laying out a high speed tempo, but high speed can be okay for people who are highly proficient, higher speed anyway. but you also may move a lot more slowly than those two numbers that I've laid out if it's a new movement for you and you're really getting the feedback as you move to, and you're adjusting to the feedback, and you're having to pay a lot of attention to your body as it moves. You might be doing almost double the speed, or taking twice as long to move through a particular movement as what I've laid out. So what I'm giving you is a normal. Feel free, especially if you're learning, or if for any other reason you need to slow it down, or if you naturally just move a little bit faster, that's fine. Those two numbers are guidelines. The middle number is not a guideline. If I put a 1 second static hold at the bottom of a squat, I just made that squat significantly harder, especially over 10 or 12 reps. So pay attention to that middle number and really follow that. A 5 second static hold in a certain position, or whatever the case may be, that's very, very intentional. Finally, let's talk about my favorite acute variable, which is weight, intensity. And so in the intensity column, you will see me write for this program BOV and BW. BW means body weight. Of course, these are push-ups, pull-ups, anything like that. As I mentioned before, feel free to make those exercises easier or do a variation that works better for you. Of course, body weight exercises depend on so many factors. The other abbreviation you're going to see is BOV. That means based on volume, which is to say that in this program, I want you to select the right weight based upon the reps and the sets that I've laid out for this program. If I give you a set of 12 or -2, and you can only get through 4 reps because the weight you chose is so heavy, lighten it back up until you're getting closer to that 12 rep count. If you have a weight that's so light that by the time you get to 12, you could increase and go to another 10 reps because it's so light, in that case, of course, you want to go a little bit heavier. There will be some cases with, for example, a kettlebell deadlift, where we're capable of deadlifting a lot of weight and you may not have that much weight available to you. One thing that you can do in this situation is to use 2 kettlebells, of course, to help double the amount of weight that you're lifting. It's okay if they're not the same weight, just switch off with each set. The other thing too is to keep in mind that the deadlift that we utilize at this level of our training is more for technical proficiency than it is to really get an extreme level of like fatigue in the body. So one of the things that you can do is if you feel like you could do 10 more reps with the deadlift, for example, you can slow the tempo down. You can really perform perfect reps. You can use 2 kettlebells and then also go to the upper end of that set window, like I mentioned, up to 5 sets. And of course, that will add a fair amount of challenge to the exercise. With that said, if you ever get to the point where you're only a few weeks into this program and you're feeling like, hey, like this is too easy, I need more, I need to learn something more challenging. You've gone through 5 sets with the prescribed rep count with the weights that you currently have, your body feels great afterwards and it's begging you for more, then you may be progressing a little bit more quickly than the program is laid out. That's kind of the beauty of the flexibility of this program, and also something that I would say would be something that your journey with kettlebells and your journey with just strength training in general, as opposed to bodybuilding, which is more about aesthetics, this is more about strength. So your journey with kettlebells and your journey with strength training is going to be very customized to your abilities, to your limitations, and also to your dream. So keep that in mind. Not everybody wants to be doing everything exactly for the same amount of time as everybody else. What works right for you will be a little bit different from somebody else. You might find that you fly through this program, but then on the 3rd level, it gets a little bit tricky for you because you don't have enough range of motion in a certain area to do a couple of the exercises, and you have to stick around for a little bit longer. But when we focus more on power, you're able to progress really, really quickly, and your body is able to do that really well. So everybody's a little bit different in their abilities, in their limitations, and also in their dream. So keep that in mind. I hope you guys love this program. Again, this is to get you started, get rid of that overwhelm. From here, you can either follow along with my workouts, or you can take that PDF and go do them by yourself. Let me know how you're getting along. I'm really curious to see. Hopefully this makes a big impact and gets you off on the right foot. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.